Hi, everybody. Welcome back to WorkTech. I'm George LaRocque, and we've got some industry deal news for you. Gigged.AI recently announced a seed round of 1.6 million British pounds. It's just under 2 million US dollars, which brings total funding to just under 3 million US. Gigged.AI is a talent marketplace that uses AI to bring employers and freelancers in the tech market together. And Rich Wilson, the founder and CEO, is here to tell us more about Gigged.AI and the deal. Welcome, Rich.
Thank you, George. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. I know now you're, I'll say based, because I know you're a remote organization out of Glasgow and London. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. We've got an office in Glasgow in Scotland. As you can tell from my accent, I'm a Glaswegian. So when we started the company, we thought that we'll have the base. There's some great talent in Scotland, especially tech talent. There's a lot of great data people here. So we thought we'll build a base here. We've also got a base in London, and then we're going to look at a base in the US. But yeah, they're really places where people can come and collaborate, when they need. But yeah, we're very much Scottish and proud.
Yeah, that's cool. And so tell everyone a little bit more about yourself and any more you'd like to set up around Gigged.AI as far as an introduction.
Yeah, of course. So my background, I spent 12 years in traditional contract staffing. So I worked for a Legis Group for 12 years. I started as a 21-year-old on a graduate trainee program. Was a pretty good tech recruiter. I was only a recruiter for 8 months, and then I was promoted into a leadership role, and then I had an amazing 12 years. I helped build tech systems brand here. Spent some time in the US. While Aerotech was growing, while the Legis Group Services brand was growing. So I had a great opportunity to work with some great leaders, and Steve Bisciotti, Jim Davis, Todd Moore, and Sean Sabdal from Aston Carter. It's just an amazing group that I worked with, that I learned from as a very young man. And I spent 12 years very much building contract staffing programs and very much SOW programs. That's probably where my specialism was very much working with large organizations, whether it be systems integrators or banks, and building statement of work programs to provide large number of contractors, but under an overall deliverable or an overall statement of work. After 12 years, I decided, I'd probably worked very hard for 12 years. I kind of needed to go in a different direction at that point in my life. And I then joined the Data Lab as a volunteer, which is Scotland's Centre for Data. And that was where I really started getting really intrigued about data science, automation, a lot of what was going on within conversational AI. That really piqued my interest. And it was just something I'd done because I was needed to do something. And then I spent a great 2.5 years at Gartner, working with CIOs and CEOs, around every topic from digital transformation, whether building data strategies, but the one that I kind of always get closer to was future of work, and specifically internal mobility systems, talent platforms, how to look at different ways to hire resource instead of just a traditional perm or contract, right? So that was kind of my background, and that's what shaped a lot of the all of those 15 plus years really built the foundation of what we're doing now.
Yeah. And how would you frame Gigged.AI when you say you call yourself a talent marketplace? How is that different from other marketplaces, or just what's your approach in this marketplace concept?
Yeah, you're right. There's obviously within the whole kind of talent platform ecosystem, it's obviously a growing place. You've got your Upwork, Fiverr, TopTal. There's obviously some established players there, which is obviously growing. Where we really seen the focus was, and this is where the staffing side came from, our focus was how do you take a lot of the things that traditionally people do really well within the staffing world, right? How do you qualify a really, really good rec, right? Or qualify a really good SOW? How do you ensure that the right people are matched in time? How do you make sure that that the whole process end to end is a seamless process with as little pain as possible for both the hiring manager and the talent? So we very much focus, how do we use data and automation to help make that a better process, but also reduce the human error, right? So I came at it from, how do I trained hundreds of recruiters, thousands probably, and even more, probably 1,000, 2,000 plus sales people within recruitment. How do you take the elements where they usually do make mistakes? How do you automate that to let them still do the things that they're good at, building relationships, dealing with issues? That's. I don't believe we get rid of recruiters with automation, but I think we can improve it, right? So really where we're coming at it is we're a data platform, which just happens to be in the talent platform ecosystem. So what we focus on doing, whether it be a high growth startup or a global enterprise, we help them qualify a piece of work consistently every single time. So we've built a very neat conversational AI and job classification tool that helps qualify. It's really what I call a mini SOW, right? So it qualifies, here's the project, here's the demand. It'll ask various questions based on what you've said. You don't need to be really techie to get it either. So it'll respond. And then it'll match to different talent pools. And this is a bit that I think is really cool of what we do. So if you're a small company, let's say you've got 4 employees, we'll help you qualify a defined piece of work and then match you to a freelancer. But we say open talent, that freelancer could be a side gigger, right? Perm, and doing some stuff in the project, which is obviously growing. They could be a full-time freelancer. They could be someone who's just graduated and looking for more experience. So we've built an open talent pool of pre-vetted talent that will be matched to that straight away, right? So, and then the whole thing is seamless, right? So in that respect, it's a freelance talent platform, right? But how we differentiate it is we spend more, our technology focuses on the quality of the gig and the quality of the match. So, no spam gigs, no, hey, I need a wife, like some of the other platforms, none of that, right? That wouldn't make it, right? It needs to be qualified. It needs to be a milestone. You can't work per hour on our platform. You can't work per day. Milestones, specific pieces of work. But also, if you're a larger organization, we can tailor the platform to also link to your internal workforce. And I think this is a really cool bit. So there's obviously internal platforms like Gloat and Fuel 50 that are amazing platforms that are then looking at how do they work with other open talent platforms. But very little open talent platforms are then going, how do we create an internal mobility? So we set out from day one that if you're a larger organization and our customer base is now becoming more larger global enterprises, we can then say, look, do you want to tap into your internal marketplace as well? And they might go, oh, we tried it, didn't work. And we're like, well, let's try this. Some are like, no, I just want to use you for open talent and I want to use it that way. That's cool. But we give the customer a choice, and that's the key thing, right? So it's a marketplace that will be able to tap into internal and open talent pools in one click. That's the key of what we are.
Yeah.
We're not trying to be a EOR platform. We're not trying to be your VMS. We're very much help you qualify, help you source, and then we'll integrate throughout. We're working with one of the largest consultancy companies in the world. We work with one of the VMSs. We've got an integration. It's seamless. That's how we want to work, right? So we're all about the quality of what goes into the cookie cutter and make sure it's then qualified and then matched. That's really what we do. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot there. I think in the market right now, the way what I just heard is the marketplace concept here for you is really about that sort of data exchange. This isn't about posting jobs and waiting for responses. It's about standardizing on a taxonomy and an understanding of the job, and doing the same thing with the talent, and then looking internally and externally. That's sort of we look at the trend right now, that when we talk about talent marketplaces, it gets confusing for a lot of folks because there are three or four. This sounds like both an external and an internal,
It's exactly that.
platform that is bringing external talent in, but you're also, really the focus is on the match. It's on the match. And is that all tech, or are you all tech? Okay. Okay.
And it was a difficult build, right? So you're right. There was taxonomy, there was conversational AI. It was a tricky build, right? We spent nearly 2 years on the build. We were lucky that we have been backed very early on, because of our background. So my co-founder and CTO was a freelancer for 12 years. He was trying to he built his own platform. He was working on major banks, Lloyds, Royal Bank of Scotland over here.
Yep. And
he was that frustrated about how they hire contractors. He's like, I'm going to create my own talent platform to find freelancers for short, sharp pieces of work, right? And then that's how we knew each other, and that's how it worked. But the build was difficult. We had to obviously find a customer base and a freelancer base that was happy to work with us during the whole experience. We've done a lot of work with user testing to really, test the hypothesis often. We were backed by Innovate UK, first of all, which is the UK's innovation arm. So they help fund the initial AI build. Yep. Scottish Enterprise, which is Scotland's kind of venture, government money, but to help, they backed us as well, as did some of the kind of early stage VCs. So we were backed quite early on. Also, our first, Scotland's actually becoming a bit of a hub for data. So some data scientists, our chairman John, they had sold their company to Dentsu, so multi-billion-dollar company. They built a data science company. They were our first investors because they really believed in what we're trying to build. So we had some genius data scientists in from day one, working alongside the recruitment guy, me, and the freelancer Craig, to really build the thing. But it was a pain, and we've just re-platformed it now and taken all the key learns and all the technical debt and eradicated it, which was painful.
Yeah,
and
I'll bet.
But we believe that we could have went out and started to just get some fees, place some people, and really just generate some revenue, i.e. old school recruitment, right? I've still got enough contacts and enough relationships. We could have, but we made a conscious decision to really automate as much and create as much of a self platform as possible, right? So a startup can go onto our platform, sign up, hire, and not have to talk to anybody. Now, an enterprise can too, but they tend not to do that, right? Because they want, you've got procurement, you usually need to figure out who's their VMS, how do we integrate with that VMS. But in theory, if they had procurement on board, they could just go up and use the platform and use it as simple as possible. And that was, as well as the automation or the data part or platform, the other thing we're maniacal about is UX, right? How do we make this? I always say to my product team, I've got an 8-year-old daughter. I said, my 8-year-old daughter needs to be able to work this platform. And that is always what we go back to. So, and we were lucky. We were brought into the Edinburgh University, one of the best places for data science. So Amazon hire all their data science PhDs from the University of Edinburgh, and we were accepted onto their AI accelerator in 2021, and that was an amazing experience for us to really build working with geniuses. And we also met a design company who then became an investor in us, who are just geniuses in UX. So we've been lucky to be able to pull in a lot of people at the right time to get it built. But that was a long answer. But yes, it's fully automated.
Yeah, that's great. And I've got an 8-year-old daughter too, and she's not my first, to come through. And the fact that you did this while you're, with an 8-year-old, good on you for taking the leap and for the success. But so I know that demands a lot of you as well. So let's talk about the deal a little bit. The timing of the deal. It's a challenging time right now to be raising funds. I mean, there's still money out there. You were successful, but I'm curious what was happening in the market or at Gigged.AI that made this the right time for this round?
Yeah, great question. I think in hindsight, the timing wasn't great. Like we're really happy where we're at. We've got a good partner in here, great team. But we done a pre-seed round. So we quit our jobs. I quit Gartner. Craig quit his job in July 2021. So at that point, we were very early. We had kind of built an MVP would be a strong word. We create a working beta that had basic AI in it, and it did work. But we launched it, and we launched it with a $500 billboard, right, and a bit of help from John Younger. You may know the godfather of the freelance revolution, as he's calling himself.
Oh yeah.
So that kind of got some early exposure in Forbes, and we had started to build a little bit of client base. So by the summer of 21, we're like, right, let's go all in. Let's do this. So we obviously we didn't really have any money in the bank. Me and Craig had put our savings in. With a little bit of grant money, but we're like, you know what? Let's do it, right? So my wife wasn't over the moon. My 8-year-old didn't know at the time, but we thought, right, let's go for it. So we were lucky very quickly. We got pre-seed funding from one of the UK's kind of really great up and coming venture firms called Tech Start Ventures. So they backed Desana, who are a future work company. They backed some really cool Equitas, which is an interview. So they've kind of backed some early ones. We always said, like, we'll have 18 months runway and then we'll raise again. So that's hence we ended up doing this deal, right? So come the summertime, we were like, right, that's us around time. Let's raise now and we'll have it done by Christmas. Now, we did get that done, but our plan always was, hey, let's raise in the US first, right? So we've done a pre-seed. So I spent a lot of time in the States. It looked like the raise was going to happen really quickly, and then in June, July in the States, and then obviously that was when the VC
world changed. Yeah.
Obviously, the FTX kind of really had an impact with that as well. So thank you to them, and so all of a sudden the US market was going, hey, look, unless you guys are here full time, like, love what you're doing, but not right now. So we had to go, right, you know what, we're going to have to do plan B. And the plan B was like, let's go and look in the UK and European market. So we were lucky that we'd obviously build some decent PR. We're quite noisy, right? We'd like to tell a story. I think as a startup, you got it. So we were able to go back and talk to a number of VCs, and we had 3 or 4 term sheets. And we were able to choose the one that we felt was the best one, which is Par Equity, which are Scottish based. They had big success in the US recently. They had invested in a company called Current Health, which are a Dundee based, and they sold to Best Buy in a 300 million plus deal. They've had some real successes recently. Also, their chairman he's been in recruitment many years. He sees where things are going. They had said no to tons of HR tech companies, and we were the one we were backing, and we thought with that kind of experience and background, it just felt like the right fit. But then this is the thing I'd say to any kind of seed round, anybody going through a seed round, the due diligence was next level, right? And that's what kind of took some time, right? The due diligence, the reviewing the code, reviewing everything. The great thing for us is we came through it actually, realizing we had a stronger business than we even thought, right? We knew we had a strong business, but I think that due diligence really made us realize, and made, our prospective investors realize, look, we've got a strong business here. We've got a strong management team. We've got strong technology. We've got all the key components. So it definitely wasn't a purpose, right, to raise through a difficult time, because the pre-seed that we done, that took a month, right, maybe 6 weeks. This one, start to finish, took probably 6-7 months, right? So, and obviously that's time away from the business, but yeah, look, we were over the moon to get it done, and we brought in some new investors, some high profile investors in the UK ecosystem. So yeah, great to get it done. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
difficult,
Yeah.
definitely
Well,
difficult.
congrats on getting it done. And I think, for all the founders, especially early stage that might be watching, you one of the key things that you talked about was, you had a plan. And in order to raise at the end of the year, you were starting, earlier in the spring, summer. And I think that's lost on a lot of folks, that, really you should always be raising, just like the old sales thing is always be closing, but you're always taking the calls and always building the relationships, because, the market conditions change. And if something happens quickly, it's a beautiful position to have a decision to make. But in this case, it took longer, but you ended up being where you needed to be. So good on you for that as well. I talked to a lot of early stage founders who don't account for that sort of potential time. So that was very smart on your part. So now you've got the funds. What are your plans now, other than global domination? What's the what are you going to do with this round?
I think very much evolution, not revolution, is the way we're looking at this, right? So, I've been lucky that I've built teams before. We know that like tripling, quadrupling headcount is a tricky thing to do. So we, from a cultural perspective, right? So we're very proud of the culture we built. We've got some great ex-staffing people. We've got some great technical team, but we're conscious that we don't want to, spin that out by bringing in too many people too quickly. So for us, won't surprise you to hear, we brought on a lot of freelancers, right? So we've, instead of going crazy and extending our burn, we've hired 2 new account executives, who I'm really excited to come in and work with us. But that's the only headcount we're adding, right? So we're not going to go and add another 10, 15 people. We have brought in a CMO on freelance who worked with a multi-billion-dollar company recently, business to business. We also have brought in a consultant in the US, who I know from my time at Ludus Group, who is a go-to-market specialist, because there's a huge play for us because we built data first. We can set up open APIs, right? We can integrate with ATS, VMS, even MSPs where needed, right? So we've got a real integration play here. So we've brought in some people we know and trust, but not on a full-time basis, to help us test that hypothesis. I believe that our business grows through integration. That is what I believe. But I now need to test that hypothesis, right? I don't want to bring in somebody on $200,000 to do it. I can't, that would be a great way to burn the money. So I brought in somebody for a 3-month engagement to speak to, alongside myself, but speak to a lot of the potential places, explore that. And because I'm raising, you hear the old kind of stereotype, raising is a full-time job. Well, it is, right? And I was, I always like, that's for normal people. I can do that. It is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And so now I can do what I'm passionate about, spending more time with the customer. We're lucky that our pipeline is really strong. But yeah, for us, we spent last year head down rebuilding the whole platform. With the funding from Scottish Enterprise and the funding from TechStart, we were very much head down. So this year for us, and building the supply at the same time. So we built a supply of over 15,000 freelancers. We've been able to build an early customer base with BBC, Skyscanner, Atos, Webhelp, a few other larger ones that I won't mention yet because the ink's not dry yet. But we're growing that customer base. So for this year is to grow our customer base, right? Yep. In the UK directly, and then in the US through integration. If those integrations go the way I think, then yes, going into 2024, we will then look to then build an operation and a team in the US. We very much see the UK and the US as the main markets for our business. Tax law, the similarities. I think if we tried to go into France, Germany, all over, it would be too much in the business, too much of a strain. So yeah, nothing like, we're not going to go mad. As I said, it's now focusing the business from being product to how do we get that product in more people's hands, right? So it's
Yeah.
a growth marketing and sales exercise now.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're really focused. So as you focus on bringing customers in, what are some of the attributes of your ideal customers? What do they look like?
So they're a real mix, and we've done that on purpose. VCs don't always love hearing that, right? So we were pitching, they're like, just focus on Series B based companies. I'm like, I can't do that. If I look at, again, with my staffing hat on, if you've got a contractor or a freelancer, they don't always want to work for the same customer in they don't want to just work in banks. Not anymore. Maybe back
Right.
in the day, but now you have a freelancers coming in. They want to have multiple opportunities, and they want to be able to work in a startup and then work with a bank or a systems integrator. So we started really growing with high growth startups. That was our initial customer base. So that's something we're continuing to focus on. The larger gigs size comes from the smaller companies, right? So it's an amazing thing we've seen. So our average gig size around $10,000. On average, $30,000 from small companies because they're not using that perm headcount.
Right.
So they're like, well, I can't hire a dev for $80,000, $120,000, but I can bring somebody in for a £30,000 piece of work with a defined end, start and end. The larger companies are using it for smaller pieces initially, right? Whether it be, I need a bit of UX, I need a bit of copyright done here. And part of the reason we took the funding, George, was that we always knew enterprise customers would be our view. So that's happened quicker. And where we're seeing the big kind of the sharpest intake of new customers has been systems integrators. So your larger tech consultancies who are getting more demand from their customers because of that perm headcount is not just going through contract and freelance, it's going through SOW or consultancy, right? It's going from OPEX to CAPEX.
Yeah.
That CAPEX budget is then meaning that they then need to hire from different pools, and a lot of their contractor programs, their MSPs and VMSs, still take them 3 months to get a contractor. So there's now this view of, and we call it direct sourcing. If you direct source through a talent platform, you could get a gig worker engaged on a deliverable straight away. And that's the trend we're seeing, and we're leaning into that trend, right? So instead of maybe selling to all the banks, we can work with the banks through the systems integrators because we're not precious about who the end customer. So we're leaning into that. And then that is where we've got the opportunity to then upsell the internal mobility solution, right? We don't go in and just try and sell them the internal mobility.
Right,
we help them through open talent. We build a relationship. Then if the customer's challenge is big enough, we're like, hey, look, have you thought about internal mobility? We're working with a French consultancy at the moment, and they're looking at, they've got a large pool of internal resource working at major accounts, but they're like, how do we make sure, we need a Java developer, and they're going out and hiring a Java developer, contract to perm, but actually they've got somebody finishing up in their other account across the street, but they've got no way to track that.
Yep.
And then that turns into, they do a few of them, and then like, we don't have MD in-house. Who have you got in your open talent? And then for us, it creates the best of both worlds because they're using this for the internal, but also they're using this for the open. And that's how we see our business is going to grow over the next kind of 24 months.
Yeah. Well, I think you're aligned on a few really key, more than trends in the market. I mean, we just put out our big initial WorkTech report, and it's talking about this, growing through integration. That's how the ecosystem works now, and not just for growth, but really the driver is being the data sort of flowing through the enterprise, and culturally, being less concerned with the customer's eyeballs being sticky on your interface and more concerned with adding value for them with your data, where they need it, when they need it to make better, decisions. The whole, external, internal view, sort of extended workforce is, I think, going to continue to get legs in a way. It's the contingent workforce, the contract workforce, freelance, that's been growing for decades. It's what the staffing industries, follow the money. That's what the recruitment industry is now. And I think you're going to see employers look to get their hands around that data and that spend more so than they have previously, because we have the capability, right? So new tools coming in. So I think you're on a few good points, and I wish you the best of luck with this. I could keep going, but we're out of time.
Yeah, of course.
Where it's probably right in your name, but where can folks go to learn more about the product if they're interested in this approach?
Yeah, of course. It's just www.gigged.ai, right? Nice and simple. Also, we're big proponents on LinkedIn, so you could follow our page or Gigged.ai on LinkedIn. Also, my handle's just Rich Wilson on LinkedIn. So again, if you want to learn more directly, just connect to me on LinkedIn, and I'd be more than happy to have a chat.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much for, a lot of transparency here today, and for being here to tell your story at WorkTech. Thank you.
No, thank you for the invite. Really appreciate it, George.
Okay, great. And thanks everybody if you're watching or listening, and until next time.